May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be always acceptable unto you, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Please be seated. The gospel today focuses on healing. And I think normally I would preach about sickness of body and of healing. But today, I think that the body that is in need of healing is our body politic. Rumors spreading throughout the district. I don't know what news sources you read or watch. Depending on which ones you read and watch, you may have heard either that the criminal indictment of Donald J. Trump is a sign that our freedom is ended and that the Gestapo are coming for all of you next. Or you might have heard, we should lock him up right now and throw away the key. I wonder whether our texts, our Bible, has anything to teach us in this moment. I'd like to start by contrasting our two first readings. We have a reading from Paul's epistle to the Romans, talking about how God's promise came to Abraham and his descendants through the righteousness of faith. For Abraham had faith, and it was reckoned to him as righteousness. And Paul is talking about several very abstract concepts: faith, the law, righteousness. But how do we know that Abraham had faith? What does Genesis actually say? Well, Genesis, being part of the Hebrew scriptures, does not deal in abstract concepts. It deals in concreteness. Now the Lord said to Abram, "Go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you." And so Abram went. The text tells us several stages of Abram's journey. At one point, the Hebrew actually says he pulled up his stakes, for Abram was a nomad. He's talking about the tent stakes. From Abram's action of obedience to God's command, we infer that he had faith in God's promise. And is that not how we, in fact, know things? By looking for the tent stakes. Where are the tent stakes? Have they been pulled up, or are they still in the ground? Some of you may know the Gilbert and Sullivan operetta, The Pirates of Penzance. How many of you know that? And do you remember the wonderful scene where the policemen are going to set forth to battle the pirates? And they have this wonderful song about how they're going to go. And the daughters of the Major General are singing about, "Go to battle, and we will mourn you." And the policeman was saying, well, now wait a minute. We didn't say we were actually going to go and be killed, but we were all going to go. And the Major General says, yes, but you don't go. We go, we go. Yes, but you don't go. Where are the stakes? What are the actual facts on which the generalizations are built? Some of you know that in addition to having taken vows as a priest, I took vows as a lawyer of the state of Oregon. And like every lawyer in this country right now, probably, I have spent the last several days reading the indictment returned from the grand jury in the Southern District of Florida. And I encourage you all to read it. It is sort of long, but it's very easy to read. It has pictures. It has short paragraphs. It has concrete details. And it will immunize you against the hysterical generalizations that are inundating you. Where are the stakes? Are the tent stakes in the ground? Or are the tent stakes packed on the camels? It's these granular facts and details on which we can build a solid understanding of reality, on which we can judge who is telling the truth and who is telling lies. I also commend to you actually reading the statute on which this indictment is based, because I have heard a lot of just plain false characterization of the Espionage Act. I brought a copy of it. In relevant part, what it says is, whoever having unauthorized possession of or control over any document, writing, map, note, etc., relating to the national defense, willfully retains the same and fails to deliver it to the officer or employee of the United States entitled to receive it, shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 10 years or both. It does not require that you actually go to a Russian agent and say, I've got this document and I'll give it to you for $1 million. No. Justice, our psalm says, is something that God cares about. And both a biblical and a modern understanding of justice is that like situations be treated alike. I ask you to read the indictment, to consider the facts in it. And then I ask you to consider, especially those of you who at some point served in the armed services or otherwise were employees of the government, and maybe you brought home some souvenirs. You know, I once got in trouble with my husband for trying to give away a ratty old t-shirt, only to discover that that was the t-shirt he had been wearing when he won the All Navy Award for physical fitness. It is this precious object. Maybe you have something similar that you brought home with you. I will bet none of you brought home documents labeled top secret. Maybe some of you had access to documents that were secret or classified while you were serving. If you had brought them home with you after the end of your service, I respectfully submit that you would have received a knock on the door from the FBI. And they would not have entered into negotiations with your lawyer over the course of several months about, please, will you return these documents? No. They would have come in with a warrant and they would have seized the documents, and you would be sitting in a jail cell now. Justice requires that like situations be treated alike. Where are the tent stakes? Donald J. Trump, like every named defendant, is entitled to a legal presumption of innocence until proven guilty. And the people demanding that we immediately lock him up are delusional, and they are not giving him the benefit of that the doubt there. He may have some defenses. The indictment presents the prosecutor's case. He's entitled to a speedy trial. He is represented by lawyers. We can't prejudge the result. But as a lawyer, I can tell you there has been nothing untoward in the process. The indictment is returned by a grand jury from the Southern District of Florida. It is not signed by President Biden. Look for the tent stakes. Because I truly believe that in some senses our freedom is at stake. That if you and the rest of the citizens of this country listen to the hysterical voices, if you take up arms believing that an injustice is being done and that your freedom is at stake and that somehow this is, the black-booted thugs of the federal government running rampant over individual rights and you need to defend, then what happens to the rule of law? What happens to our democracy? Look at the tent stakes. Read the indictment. Follow the most unbiased sources of news you can find. And do not pay attention to the crowd hysteria. Because I don't think that God created this Constitution. But I do think that the principles of justice that God has communicated to us through Scripture, the idea that rich and poor should be both held to the rule of law, the idea that people are entitled to make their defense, the idea that might does not make right, and that we all have a judge who looks for congruity between what we say we believe and what we actually do. And that these principles inform our Constitution and our set of laws. But they only exist as long as we have faith in them, as long as we in fact follow them. And as long as we let people have their day in court, but not have a mob defending them, may God have mercy upon this country in our time of trial.